Christmas Eve. The lights glowed warm, the air thick with cinnamon and deceit. My grandfather sat at the head of the table, his hands folded neatly over the silverware. The man spoke rarely, but when he did, his words carried the kind of weight that could bury someone alive. He looked around at all of us, my parents, my sister, me, and smiled faintly. Then, casually, he asked, "Did you like the house I gave you 2 years ago?" The world froze. Forks stopped mid-air. My mother's hand trembled slightly. My father didn't blink. I frowned. "What house?" I asked. "I never received anything." The silence stretched until it felt like a noose. Grandfather turned his head slowly toward my parents. His face didn't change, but theirs did. Color drained from their skin. Their eyes darted anywhere but toward him. And just like that, I understood. They had taken it. The house that was meant for me. The house my grandfather bought after I finished university, when I was struggling to build a life. I remembered how my parents had told me he hadn't left anything. That times were tough. That I should be patient. They lied. They took it for themselves. I didn't say a word that night, but inside, something shifted. Quietly, permanently. 2 years earlier, I would have defended them. I believed in family, in loyalty. I thought love meant trust. But betrayal has a way of maturing you overnight. That evening after dinner, I drove home in silence. My phone buzzed. My father, calling. I ignored it. My mother texted, "Please don't tell him anything yet. We'll explain." They wouldn't. They'd lie again. So I did what they never expected. I stayed calm. I started digging. I requested bank statements from the time my grandfather made that purchase. The records showed a transfer. The property registered under my father's name, not mine. They even renamed the deed 6 months later. Sold it for cash, $500,000. I remembered how they told me they couldn't help pay for my business, how they'd watched me drown in debt while they were living in that house by the coast, the one my grandfather said was for me. Every sleepless night, every humiliation, every time I begged for their help, they already had the means to change everything, and they kept it. That realization didn't break me, it sharpened me. I didn't confront them right away. I learned patience from them, how to pretend, how to smile through deception. Over the next year, I rebuilt myself. My company began to thrive, quietly, efficiently. I found an attorney, someone discreet. We traced the transaction, the forged documents, the misuse of funds. Then I learned something else. My father had used my grandfather's account to make that purchase. That wasn't just immoral, it was illegal. I gathered everything. Proof, signatures, transfers. And I waited for the right moment. Christmas Eve was poetic symmetry. The table, the wine, the same people. Grandfather's question had cracked the surface. All I had to do was let the truth bleed out. When dessert came, I leaned forward. "Grandpa," I said softly, "I actually found the house papers, the ones Dad registered under his name." You could hear the air leave the room. My father's hand tightened around his glass. "That's nonsense," he said. My mother shook her head too fast. "It's a misunderstanding." Grandfather's voice was calm. "I gave that house to you, not to them." I nodded. "I know, and I have the proof." I slid the folder across the table. Bank statements, legal copies, sale records. My parents didn't even touch it. They just stared, pale, sweating, silent. Grandfather opened it slowly. I watched his expression shift, disbelief, anger, disappointment. When he looked up, his eyes were cold. "You stole from your own child?" My father tried to speak, but no words came out. I didn't look away. I wanted them to see what they created. The calm, methodical version of me who didn't raise his voice, didn't beg for love. That night, I walked out as my grandfather called his lawyer. The next week, the house was legally transferred back into my name. My father was charged for fraud. The business he'd built collapsed overnight. My mother called me once, crying, begging, but I didn't answer. I stood outside the house a month later. It wasn't much, modest, quiet, but it was mine. The sea wind carried the faint scent of salt and smoke from the chimney. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. It looks like control, composure, silence. My grandfather still doesn't talk about that Christmas Eve. Neither do I. But sometimes, when I drive past their old place, the one they lost, I see the curtains drawn, the emptiness behind them. And I think about the moment my grandfather asked that simple question, and how a single sentence was all it took for the truth to burn everything they built. Merry Christmas.